Every single year, billions of pesos vanish in the Philippines, and almost no one ever admits where the money goes. In 2007, a president was found guilty of plunder, one of the biggest crimes against the nation. But just 6 weeks later, he was pardoned and walked free. Back in 1986, another president was forced out during the People Power Revolution. Yet by 2024, the state was still recovering his hidden fortune, worth about 280 billion pesos. So here's the hard question. If leaders can steal for decades, get caught, and still escape punishment, what chance does the ordinary citizen ever have? Imagine paying your taxes, hoping they fix roads and protect your community, only to learn that in 2025, about 70% of flood control funds were lost to ghost projects. This isn't history repeating once. It's a cycle that never ends. Today, we reveal the top 10 biggest corruption scandals in Philippine history and the hidden truth that explains why corruption survives every revolution. At number 10, we begin with Ferdinand Marcos Sr. In 1986, he was forced from power by the People Power Revolution. For more than 20 years, Marcos ruled the Philippines under accusations of fraud, dictatorship, and large-scale theft. By 2024, the state had recovered about 280 billion pesos in his hidden wealth, making it the biggest corruption case in the nation's history. For the millions of Filipinos who filled EDSA, this was supposed to mark the end of corruption, but instead, it became the yardstick. Every scandal after was measured against the Marcos billions. The fall of a dictator proved one thing: corruption could be exposed, but it also showed something else, that even the most powerful could fall, and yet corruption would still survive. If Marcos could be ousted, why would the next leaders be afraid? So who became the first president actually convicted of plunder? At number 9, we move to Joseph Arap Estrada. In 2007, he made history as the first Philippine president convicted of plunder. For ordinary citizens, this looked like justice. For the first time, a leader at the very top was proven guilty in court. But just 6 weeks later, everything changed. Everything changed. Then President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo granted Estrada a full pardon, erasing his sentence and setting him free. The message was clear: justice could be delivered, then taken back. Ordinary Filipinos served full prison terms for petty theft. But a president convicted of stealing billions walked free within weeks. The conviction showed that corruption could be punished. The pardon showed that power could erase it. And if even a guilty verdict could disappear, what hope was there for future cases? So which presidency came next, defined by scandals that never stuck in court? At number 8, we have Gloria Macapagal Arroyo and her husband, Mike Arroyo. She ruled from 2001 to 2010, a presidency marked by scandal after scandal. The most infamous was the $329 million NBN ZTE broadband deal. At number 7, we find Janet Lim Napoles, the so-called pork barrel queen. She was the mastermind of the PDAF scam, where lawmakers' priority development assistance funds were diverted to fake NGOs. Instead of reaching communities, billions of pesos disappeared into private pockets. The scandal shook the nation because senators and congressmen were exposed as partners in theft. Money meant for classrooms, hospitals, and the poor was gone. Napoles became the face of high-level plunder. Her cases dragged on for years, but in 2025 she was convicted again, proving the scale of her fraud. Rules on pork barrel spending were reshaped, but corruption did not vanish. It simply evolved. At number 6 is Andal Ampatuan Jr. He became infamous for the 2009 Maguindanao massacre, the deadliest election-related attack in Philippine history. But his story was not only about violence, it was also about corruption. By 2023, he was sentenced to 210 years in prison for graft. Investigations uncovered hundreds of bank accounts, vast landholdings, and fleets of cars, all frozen by the courts. The case showed how violence and corruption fed each other. Political power built on fear, protected by stolen wealth. For many Filipinos, it was a reminder that money and guns often worked hand in hand. And if warlords could fall, what about presidents once praised as reformers? Which leader, despite a clean image, later faced his own corruption clouds? At number 5 is Fidel Vif Ramos, the reformer president from 1992 to 1998. He was respected as a former general who promised clean governance. But even his term was not free of controversy. The Centennial Expo was rocked by overpricing issues, and government reclamation deals faced questions of corruption. For many Filipinos, it was a shock that even a leader with a reformist image was touched by scandal. COA and Senate reports pointed to padded contracts, raising doubts about his clean legacy. And if reformers were tainted, what about leaders openly accused? Which modern president's circle was tied to shabu smuggling and prison scandals? At number 4 is Rodrigo Duterte's inner circle. In 2017, Customs Chief Nicanor Faeldon was linked to the 6.4 billion peso shabu shipment. By 2019, he was fired again over the GCTA for sale scandal involving early prison releases. Meanwhile, Paulo Duterte, the president's son, faced the so-called Davao Group smuggling allegations and a 2024 DOJ complaint. The controversies piled up, but none led to convictions. For victims' families, the question was simple. At number 3 is Jejomar Binay, the former vice president known as the Makati King. He was accused of corruption tied to the 2.2 billion peso Makati parking building project. For nearly a decade, he faced case after case. 23 graft and corruption charges in total. But by August 2025, the courts cleared him of all charges. For his supporters, it was proof of vindication. At number 2 is Ferdinand Martin Romualdez, Speaker of the House. On September 17, 2025, he resigned after being charged with 12 counts of graft and falsification. The allegations centered on 241 billion pesos in budget insertions, one of the largest in Philippine history. For a powerful dynasty tied to the Marcos name, it was a stunning fall. But Romualdez's downfall was not the end. His scandal was only part of something even bigger. What was the massive scandal that shook the entire government in 2025? At number 1 is the 2025 flood control scandal. Whistleblowers revealed that 70% of funds for flood control projects since 2023 had vanished. Billions were funneled into ghost projects and kickbacks, sparking heated Senate hearings. Citizens were furious. Mass protests erupted nationwide. Cabinet ministers were fired, and projects were abruptly canceled. For many, it felt like the largest reckoning since the fall of Marcos. But even with firings and hearings, one question remained. What hidden truth ties all these scandals together? From Marcos Sr. to the 2025 flood control scandal, convictions erased, cases dismissed, scandals repeated. 40 years later, Filipinos still march, still demand, still hope. The question, will the next generation break the cycle or repeat it again? These scandals are not just headlines. They are the nation's recurring wounds. But knowing this history is the first step to breaking it. Subscribe for more deep dives into the untold political stories shaping our world. Which scandal shocked you most? And do you think the cycle can ever truly end?